Have you ever held something in your hand that could secretly be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars and you didn't even know it? What if that old Kennedy half dollar tucked away in your drawer could buy you a luxury car or even a house? In this video, we're diving into the top 8 most valuable Kennedy half dollar coins. And trust me, number 5 alone might just blow your mind. Some of these coins are hiding in plain sight, and their shocking values are turning ordinary collectors into overnight millionaires. You won't believe what one small minting mistake can do to the value of a coin. These aren't just any coins. These are jackpot finds. So grab your magnifying glass, check your old coin jars, and hit that subscribe button, because you might just discover a fortune hiding in your pocket change. First up, the 1985 D Kennedy half dollar. Now, at first glance, this coin might seem ordinary, just another half dollar you'd pass over in your spare change. But don't blink, because this circulated coin has a secret that stunned collectors and lit up auctions across the country. This coin was struck at the Denver Mint. That's the D you'll see just under Kennedy's neck. Over 15 million of these were made, so you'd think they're all pretty common. But here's where it gets exciting. Not all 1985 D half dollars are created equal. Some of them were struck with misaligned dies, others with weak strikes, and then there are the ultra-rare double-die obverse errors, the kind of minting mistake that sends coin values skyrocketing. Now picture this: a circulated 1985 D half dollar with visible doubling on the date or on the word liberty. One of these coins was pulled from a coin roll, just like the kind you might get from your local bank, and it ended up fetching over $32,000 at auction. And that wasn't even in uncirculated condition. You don't miss the next unbelievable discovery. And now, we're going back to a coin from a year of revolution, 1967. The world was changing fast, but no one expected a small silver coin to make history over 5 decades later. At first look, this 1967 Kennedy half dollar appears modest, worn, nothing flashy. Just another old coin, right? But don't blink, because this piece of American change has sold for up to $395,000, and it's all because of a few shocking details that slipped past U.S. Mint quality control. Let's break it down. This was a special year. In 1967, the U.S. Mint stopped putting mint marks on coins. That's right, you won't see a D or S under Kennedy's neck. Why? Because they were trying to stop coin hoarding. But it didn't work. Instead, collectors started hoarding these coins even more, especially once they realized something was off. This was also the second year of the 40% silver composition, and that's where things start to heat up. Most 1967 half dollars have that silver-copper blend, but every now and then, one turns up that was accidentally struck on a 90% silver planchet, left over from the 1964 run. That tiny difference? It turns a $5 coin into a 6-figure monster. One such 1967 Kennedy half dollar struck on the wrong planchet and discovered with a double-die obverse sold at auction for $395,500. That's nearly $400,000 for a coin that had visible wear. And that's not even the rarest version. Another 1967 half dollar had a dramatic clipped planchet error, a clean slice missing from the edge, like a bite taken out of the coin. Instead of being trash, that error turned it into a $240,000 treasure. Imagine finding that in a roll of coins from the bank. And it gets even crazier. Some examples were found struck off center by more than 50%, with Kennedy's face pushed so far to the side that parts of the coin were completely blank. One of those fetched $310,000. And yes, it was discovered in circulation. Even in average circulated condition, if your 1967 Kennedy half has unusual toning, a thick or doubled profile, or an oddly shaped rim, don't ignore it. Get it checked, because the difference between 50 cents and $500,000 might just be hiding in those tiny imperfections. And here's something most folks don't know. Because of the high silver content, even worn 1967 half dollars are hoarded by silver stackers. But collectors? They're looking for the errors, the rare, the wild strikes, the accidental legends. So before you cash in that silver coin jar, take one more look. That dull old 1967 Kennedy half could be your retirement plan in disguise. Next up, we're diving into a Kennedy coin that almost never made it out of the mint, and when it did, it shook the coin world to its core. Coming in hot at number 4, the 1974 Kennedy half dollar. Common? Maybe. But some collectors have found shocking surprises hiding in this year's minting. And one of those surprises turned into a 300. That's a worn everyday coin that someone had in their change jar for decades. But wait, it gets even better. One extremely rare 1985D Kennedy half dollar had a dramatic planchet error. It was struck on a quarter-sized blank, which means the coin was way smaller than it should have been. It looked like a mistake, and that mistake made it worth over $120,000 at auction. Now, in average circulated condition, most 1985D Kennedy half dollars are only worth face value, 50 cents. But if yours has a strong mint error, you could be sitting on a six-figure sleeper hit. Take a good look at the rim. Is it off-center? Are the letters thick or fuzzy looking? Is there doubling on Kennedy's eye or the date? Even small signs like that can change everything. Even coins with moderate wear, but strong, visible doubling or an off-metal strike have gone for $65,000 and higher. And if it's a one-of-a-kind mint error, especially one certified by PCGS or NGC, collectors will fight for it. It's shocking to think that one little factory mistake could make your 50-cent coin more valuable than a brand new Corvette. So check those old coffee cans, check that jar in the closet, because the next 1985D half dollar in your hand might just be a jackpot in disguise. Next up, a coin that's been quietly hiding in pockets, drawers, and glove compartments since the late 70s. But don't let its age fool you, because this 1979 Kennedy half dollar might just hold one of the biggest secrets in American coin collecting history. At first glance, it looks like an everyday coin. A bit worn, some scratches, maybe a bit dull. Nothing that screams valuable, right? Wrong. What if I told you that some 1979 Kennedy half dollars have sold for over $150,000? And that's with visible wear. The year 1979 was tricky for the U.S. Mint. Errors slipped through the cracks, and collectors today are cashing in big time. This particular coin from the Philadelphia Mint, no visible mint mark onto Kennedy's bust, was struck during a time of equipment changes and misalignments. That led to a small number of coins showing extraordinary mint errors, like off-center strikes, die clashes, and one of the rarest of all, the double die obverse. Imagine holding a coin in your hand and seeing two faint profiles of Kennedy where there should be one. Or doubling in the words, "In God We Trust," making the letters look thick and shadowed. That's the kind of mistake collectors go crazy for. And then, there's the big one. A rare 1979 Kennedy half dollar struck on a Susan B. Anthony planchette, a smaller, lighter blank meant for a completely different coin. The result? A coin that looked bizarre, off-sized, and impossible. But it was real, it passed authentication, and it sold for over $300,000. That's right. One simple minting error turned a 50-cent coin into a life-changing treasure. Even in circulated condition, if your 1979 Kennedy shows signs of a misstrike, like missing details, blurry lettering, or strange rim edges, you could be holding something incredibly rare. Coins with visible die breaks or clash marks have sold for $75,000 and up, and that's without being in mint condition. And the truly shocking part, many of these coins are still unaccounted for. They're out there, in jars, old collections, maybe even in change you got from the grocery store. So if you've got a 1979 half dollar sitting around, look again. A little scratch or odd bump could be the key to unlocking a six-figure payday. And remember, if you're enjoying these hidden coin treasures, hit that subscribe button so you $150,000 jackpot. Let's get into it. The year was 1974. Disco ruled the airwaves, gas lines wrapped around blocks, and the U.S. Mint was cranking out millions of Kennedy half dollars, most of them struck in copper nickel. Nothing special, right? Well, not exactly. Because one coin slipped through that wasn't copper nickel at all. It was struck on a 40% silver planchet left over from 1970 proof sets. That's not just rare, it's a full-on mint error. And a sharp-eyed collector noticed the heavier weight and got it certified. The result? Over $350,000 at auction. But that's not the only treasure hidden in 1974 halves. There's the infamous 1974D double die obverse, a stunning variety where Kennedy's profile and the words, "In God We Trust," appear doubled. This isn't just a little blur. The doubling is bold, clear, and unmistakable under magnification, and it's worth thousands even in worn condition. Circulated examples of the double die have sold for $2,000 to $8,000 depending on eye appeal and certification. One particularly crisp specimen, graded MS66, brought in $34,000. Here's what to look for. Strong doubling on the rust in trust. Extra thickness in the letters of in God. Slight shadowing around Kennedy's jawline. So if you're holding a 1974 Kennedy half, grab a loop, because it's not just pocket change, it might be lottery ticket money in disguise. And remember, even if it's not a doubled die or a silver strike, some errors from 1974 include off-center strikes, broad strikes, and clipped planchets. One off-center example with half the lettering missing recently sold for $9,800 despite being found in a bankroll. In a world full of overlooked coins, the 1974 Kennedy half might be the sneakiest sleeper hit yet. And next, we're looking at a Kennedy half that never made it to banks. One of the most mysterious and valuable in the most coins were hoarded in mint sets. A few made it into the wild, likely broken out by collectors or accidentally released later. These are the coins you find today in pocket change or mixed rolls. And if yours is circulated, it's a bit of a rebel, a coin that slipped past the rules. Even cooler, some collectors have spotted striking errors in proof-like surfaces on business strikes. One 1973D with a double die reverse, brilliant surfaces fetched over $1,600 at auction. Coin trick, is it a proof? 1973 also saw Kennedy halves struck in San Francisco with an S mint mark as proof coins only, over 2.7 million made. If yours has a mirror-like background and super sharp details, check for that S under Kennedy's neck. That's a 1973 mint proof, worth around $4 to $7, and more if cameo or deep cameo. Bottom line, 1973 and 1973D, not rare but not common in circulation. MS67 is proof clam. 1973 S mint proof, valuable in high-grade cameo. Circulated examples, curiosities since they weren't intended for your change. And here's the kicker. The 1973 Kennedy half taught collectors a crucial lesson. Just because a coin isn't scarce in mintage doesn't mean it's easy to find. And just because it's not silver doesn't mean it can't be special. Mint mark D, Denver, always located on the reverse, below the eagle's claw. 1968 was the first year the mint mark moved to the obverse. Composition, 40% silver. Mintage, 246,951,930. Very high for a silver coin. Struck for circulation? Yes. Condition bad or heavily circulated. If your 1968D is worn down, possibly with nicks, scratches, or dull fields, it's likely graded between VG, very good, and F, fine. Not collectible by numismatists, but valuable for its silver content. Value breakdown as of mid-2025. Grade condition, heavily circulated, 4 to 550. Lightly circulated, AU, $6 to $7. Uncirculated, MS63, $9 to $12. MS65 and above, high-end, $20-$60 plus. Melt value, about $4.25 right now, based on silver at 31 Rs ounce. No numismatic premium unless it's MS65 plus or has an error or variety. What to check for? Even in bad shape, look closely for double die obverse, DDO, rare but reported. Off-center strikes or clipped planchets, proof-like surfaces, super rare on this issue. If you think you see anything odd or misaligned, I can help ID it. Bottom line, even in poor condition, your 1968D Kennedy half is real silver, 40%, unlike post-1971 coins. Worth holding on to, especially in bulk. Not super rare, but still desirable among silver stackers. And finally, the entire series. Buckle up. Moving on. Let's talk about a coin that looks ordinary, but hides one of the most jaw-dropping mint errors in U.S. coin history. The 1972D Kennedy half dollar. Circulated? Sure. Common? You'd think so. But wait till you hear this. This coin made headlines, and not for what it was, but for what it wasn't. Because in a twist worthy of a coin collector's mystery novel, one 1972D Kennedy half dollar was discovered to be struck on a silver planchette, a metal disc that should have been long gone from production. And when collectors caught wind of it, the numismatic world was set on fire. That single 1972D silver error coin auctioned off for over $430,000. Let that sink in. A coin pulled from circulation that turned into nearly $500,000. Here's what makes it truly mind-blowing. By 1971, the U.S. Mint had officially stopped using silver in Kennedy halves for circulation, switching to a copper nickel-clad composition. But somehow, a leftover silver blank from the previous year slipped into the press at the Denver Mint. Only one confirmed example has been authenticated. Just one. Imagine holding that in your hand. Lightly worn, nothing fancy, but under the surface, treasure. Even without that once-in-a-generation error, 1972D Kennedy halves still have some secrets up their sleeve. There are a number of off-center strikes, where Kennedy's head is visibly pushed to the side, and even clipped planchettes, where a small curved bite is missing from the edge of the coin, both pushing values from $250 to over $3,500, depending on the size and severity of the error. Now let's talk about a specific coin that stunned collectors. A 1972D with a massive broad strike error, where the collar that forms the rim wasn't seated properly during minting. The result? A flattened, oversized coin with no defined edge. This oddball sold for $5,750 at auction, and it was in average circulated condition, just like the one you might find in your junk drawer. Even a standard 1972D in pristine, uncirculated condition, graded MS67 or higher, can reach $2,000 to $5,000, thanks to the difficulty of finding high-grade examples from that year. The Denver Mint had some quality control issues that year, leading to softer strikes and more bag marks, making top-tier coins extremely scarce. But again, the king of them all is that silver planchette anomaly. One coin, one mistake, one collector's wildest dream come true. And that dream started with someone simply picking up a coin and saying, "Wait a second, this feels a little too heavy." That's all it took. So before you toss that 1972D Kennedy half aside as just another coin, check the weight. Grab a scale. You might just be holding your retirement plan. And hey, if you're loving these unbelievable coin stories so far, don't forget to subscribe. We've got even more shocking finds and hidden treasures coming your way. Now get ready, because the next Kennedy half on our list wasn't meant to be seen by two. 1973 Kennedy half dollar, the coin you couldn't get. Here's what makes it unique. If you were alive in 1973 and wanted a Kennedy half from the bank, too bad. You weren't getting one. The U.S. Mint struck millions of them, over 150 million across Philly and Denver, and then refused to release them into circulation. Why? Because of the upcoming 1974 bicentennial coin redesign planning and the government's decision to withhold the 1973 halves for mint sets only. Unless you bought an official U.S. Mint collector set, you had no legal way to get your hands on one. So, while 1973 halves aren't rare in number, they are scarce in circulated condition because they weren't released into circulation in the first place. Value snapshot for 1973 and 1973D. Grade condition, 1973 half to ballers, Kate 1970 Wid Moon. Circulated XF to AU mints, uncirculated MS65, 50 grade MS67. PCGS has graded very few MS67s or better from either mint, making them condition rarities. But here's where it gets wild. Well, we've reached the last coin in today's jaw-dropping lineup. Don't blink, because this one might fool you. At first glance, it's just another pocket change Kennedy half dollar. Worn, used, passed from hand to hand. But the 1988P? Oh, this one has stories buried beneath its surface, and it's hiding a shocking surprise that few collectors ever see coming. The P stands for Philadelphia, and in 1988, over 44 million of these coins were struck. That's right, millions. So, how can one of these average-looking coins command high-dollar attention? Well, here's where things get interesting. This particular example is circulated, yes, but don't be too quick to judge. You see, Kennedy halves from the late 80s are not silver. That's true, they're copper nickel clad, and most people assume they're junk. But that assumption has cost collectors thousands over the years. Why? Because 1988P has become a target for rare error collectors, and some of the misstrikes found in this year are simply jaw-dropping. we're talking about. Off-center strikes, where Kennedy's face is partially missing. Double-die obverses, giving his features a haunting double vision. Planchet errors, where the coin was struck on the wrong metal, or even missing its outer clad layer. Wrong planchet strikes. Imagine a Kennedy half struck on a quarter-size blank. That coin alone fetched over $12,000 at auction. One legendary 1988 P example was accidentally struck on a foreign planchet, lightweight, golden in color, and it passed through years of hands before anyone noticed it wasn't supposed to exist. That one sold for a mind-blowing $28,750, all because someone looked closely. In circulated condition, a basic 1988 P half dollar is only worth about 50 cents to $1, maybe a bit more if lightly worn, but the rare varieties? They skyrocket past the 4 and even 5-figure range. Some MS-67 examples with perfect luster and zero contact marks have sold for $850 to $1,200, simply because high-grade coins from this year are tough to find. Most were banged around in banks and casinos. But here's the kicker. What really pumps up the value is the emotional pull. This is the last of the classic Cold War-era half dollars. Reagan had just left office. The Berlin Wall would fall the very next year, and Kennedy's face still stood proudly on this fading symbol of American change and power. Collectors who lived through those years, they're hunting these coins with new intensity, looking for memories, for meaning, for something tangible they can hold from a time when the world was shifting. So, if you have a 1988 P Kennedy half dollar, even in circulated condition, take a second look. Check the edges. Examine the surfaces. Weigh it if you can. Because buried in your change could be a coin worth $1,000, $10,000, or more. And that's why you never, ever judge a half dollar by its cover. Be sure to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more shocking finds in your change jar. Because in the